Hi guys, Badmus here, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Right now we'll talk about the support folder and creating custom commands. So let's get right into it and let us visit the support folder. As I explained before, the support folder, what it allows you to do is it allows you to create scripts that should run before your script begins to run. Now, the um the the plugins folder does something different. It runs with the node. It's like a preprocessor. So before your project launches at all, it will run with the node that calls your project. That's the difference between the plugins folder and the support folder. So when you see some particular dependencies being set up in the plugins folder, it means they work like a preprocessor. They work with the node environment. And if others are set up in the index file of the support folder, it means they are like scripts and they are dependencies that can work, works before your script begins to run. So what this tells us essentially, like I had mentioned in earlier videos, is that Cypress tends to check its default folders for the commands that is required to run your code. So what that tells you inherently is you can use those folders and the files in it without creating extra files yet, and the files in it to run your code, and it will be fast because those are the places that Cypress would ideally look at first. So with that in mind, let us begin to create commands. Now remember that we have already created a step here where we check, we insert a search item and we click the search button. Now, for the search button, you realize that there's just one activity, just click the search button, right? But for the search, for the actual search, it isn't just one activity. There are three different activities that are related. You get the search box, then you type. So we will create two commands. And the command, one will be generic and the other one will be dynamic. The one that will be generic will be the button click because it only clicks that button. But the one that will be dynamic would accept a value to type. So with that being said, with all that in mind, let's begin. So the advantage of what we've done here before is we do not need to be importing anything. And we can also take this into consideration when creating these commands. Because the CY fixture, the fixture command knows to go and check where the default fixture folder is and check for the element file, if it is a JSON and all that. And I also forgot to mention that when you just write elements alone and you don't put an extension, although it goes into the folder, the fixtures folder, to look for elements with any of the extension, but it has an hierarchy that it follows. The first one it checks is any elements that has an extension of JSON. What that tells you primarily is if you want to create files, if you want to hide your elements, locators and all in your fixtures folder, just use a JSON format because that's the first type of file it will try to look for before it looks for any other type of file. So these are just some tips that you could use to create faster files that are scripts that are actually very fast. So now let us create the command. In the command file, there are already samples that we could use. So we could just copy one of it. We'll copy one of it, or let's just write it all by ourselves so you can see the process. So what that means is we call the Cypress key. Then on it, we look for command, commands. Then we want to add a command. So how do we add the command? We put the title of the command here. What do we want to call the command? This one we want to call search an item. Search, pardon my spelling, search an item, right? And after calling that, then let us create the function that would help us achieve that. Now, we make a space. Now, we want to create another command. Let's copy and paste this. Because that command only does one particular thing. Click search button. So it means at any point in time, it will click the search button. So this will be generic for us. Now, what we have here is a command structure. They look similar at this point, but how do we make one generic and how do we make one dynamic? I mean, how do we make one static and how do we make one generic or dynamic? So what that means that we need to pass in an argument. So let's call the argument item, right? So it means that it will perform the action, but depending on the type of item you pass in, that is what is going to react to. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to bring in the commands that will work for us. So let me just copy everything here and I'll paste it here. So let me explain why I need all of that. I need the cy.fixture because I need to access the elements. I still need to access the elements file. And it doesn't mean that just because it is here, it won't work. Yes, it will work. Because the fixture command, like I said, knows that once this command has been triggered, it has to go to the default fixtures folder. Whatever you've called your default fixtures folder will be where the fixture would go to and look for this particular file called elements. So does that make sense? So that's what we have here. So in this case, we know that we would click, we are not clicking here. So let's remove click because all we just want to do is search. So the text box will remain the same, but the search item will be different. So instead of having an iPhone here, because if we leave an iPhone here, it means it will only be typing an iPhone into it. So all we just need to do is put an item. So what that means essentially for us is anytime we want to search for an item, we just call this command search an item. Let me start with a small letter here. Search an item, we call this, and when we call this, we just need to pass in an argument. So it will search for that particular argument we pass into it. I hope that makes sense. So with that in mind, let's do the same thing for this and change what is there. So right now, all we just need to do is remove the search. And unlike the button, it's only one button at all times. So there is no need to make this one generic. It's just going to be static because all it will do is click the search button. So that is the particular action. So what this means is if you are now creating so many scenarios, just like you know that your actions will be repeated. You've looked at those scenarios manually. You see that so many actions will be repeated, like you'll be typing a lot. You could just create a custom command that will be typing anything for you. In that case, it will just look for the elements, the text field or the text area or the input area where it is supposed to type, and the value is going to type. So in that case, you will just have two arguments, the search field and the text field and the text itself. Those are the values you would have there. I hope that makes sense. Perhaps when we get probably another sample site that would help us to type, maybe we could make more sense of this, but with what we have right now, let's just make do with it. So now that we have created a generic command and we have created a static command, let us apply it to our code. What we just need is we need to copy this, and in our code we just come here. So let's start from the beginning. So we would not need all this cy.fixture anymore. So want to visit, we visited Amazon for the first time, and what do we want to do? We want to search for an item. What item do we want to search for? Oh, we'll still need the cy.fixture because we still need to call the search item. So let me undo what I just did. Let me undo what I just did and remove everything here. So what we need to do now is cy.search for an element. And what element do we want to search for? What do we want to search for? Ferrari. I hope I got this spelling of Ferrari. Let me check. Let me check the elements folder. Okay, so I missed that. It's Ferrari. Yeah, Ferrari. So this is what it will search for. And in the next one, we want to click the button. So we'll just come here and we'll copy the command title, click search button, and we'll bring it into here and just paste it, click search. If we test it this way, just because we've not changed this one does not mean they won't work, because they are still working codes. But let us use this to test what we have done. Then if it works, we'll just copy it across the remaining codes. So let's see. Let's run this and see. Oh, pardon me. Oh my goodness. Why am I shaky? Let me do that again. Oh, I have this internet issue that comes up. Just hold on a bit. Yeah, so we are back. And let's see. Let's see if our command will work. So you see, because of the internet lag, it's taking a while for the page to load, and now it has loaded. And everything is working now. As you can see, it loaded and it typed Ferrari and it clicked the search button. So this means that the new command worked. So let's go into our code and copy and paste, and we just do the rest. So I'm going to copy this and I will paste and change this to iPhone. And also paste here. And change this to Pixel Pro. Then get it iPhone and Pixel Pro. Okay, so let us see if this would work. Let's see if this works. Okay, so it's still running. I don't know why how I got into this lag, but we can stop this and try to run everything all over again. So let's do this. Let's see if it runs now. So if it runs successfully, it means we've been able to create commands. And when it runs successfully, so I will do another video to extend the command folder using a dependency. That will introduce us to how to set up some dependencies when you install them into your code. As you can see, I think this one is faster now. No, I guess not. It isn't faster. So if the default command timeout was still at 4 seconds, there is a high probability that it won't finish typing Ferrari. and it will just go on to the next command. But because we've extended that time, so when it had become slow, it's still within its time range, so it's still working as expected. So imagine if it was still 4 seconds, like I said, the page load would not be complete, but it will just move on to the next test. So now let's see if it will search for an iPhone now that we've changed the command. So as you can see, it is slow again, but because it is within 30 seconds, it has started typing. And okay, that returned a false positive for us because the 30 seconds elapsed, so it only did I. So I think we need to put some checks to make sure that those things actually exist. So what that means is that we can go into our command folder, the commands that we just created, and put some checks into them. So we can go into commands and say, okay, cy.get dot should, like I showed in the previous video when we talked about weights. So be visible. And we copy this too. And we add it here. Should be visible as well. Let's just use the same checks and let's run it one more time before we end this video. As you can see, now it has verified, but that lag in typing is still there. But this shouldn't be. It has verified that the button is there and it has clicked it. So let's see if it would obey the same rule for the other tests. And at some point, let me also say that I will talk about running our codes in headless mode. I intentionally still left it out because I would prefer that we talk about it when it is time to push this set of codes into a pipeline. So that I felt that would be the best time to talk about the headless running. So as you can see, it works now. Types the iPhone 13 and moves on to the last one. Let's see that it works for Google Pro. So once it's able to type Google Pro, Google Pixel 6, that's a very long thing to type. So let's see, with all this tardiness, let's see if it can type it. It typed it and it did not exceed the time, which is good. So our test works. So with all of this all done, in the next video we'll talk about how to expand the command section and create more commands from it. And the expansion only makes it faster actually. We'll see in the next video. Do not forget to like and subscribe. Have a nice day.